Today, we will be covering lesson name, A Case of Suspicion in your syllabus. So learners, let's begin with the chapter. Let's go through the background of the author. So this is Edgar Wallace. Edgar Wallace was born on April 1st, 1875 in Greenwich, London, England. He died on February 10, 1932 in Hollywood, California, US. He was a British novelist, playwright and journalist who was an enormously popular writer of detective and suspense stories. Born into poverty, he was an illegitimate London child. Wallace left school at the age of 12 and held a variety of odd jobs until he joined the army at 18. He served in the South African War until 1899 when he became a reporter. Wallace practically invented the modern thriller. His works in his genre are complex but are clearly developed plots and are known for their exciting climaxes. Wallace wrote around 175 books, 15 plays and countless articles. His literary reputation has suffered since his death. His works include Sanders of the River, The Crimson Circle, The Flying Squad and The Terror. So these are some important works of Edgar Wallace. Edgar Wallace was known for writing detective novels. Now learners, before beginning with the chapter, let's go through some learning objectives. So after completing the lesson successfully, you will be able to read and understand a suspense story in English. Learners, you will be able to use phrasal verbs. You will also be able to change direct speech into indirect speech, give and understand direction in speech. Plus, you will be able to write your own experiences. Now, let's begin with the lesson. A country doctor sets out to help a patient in the middle of a windy night. Whom does he meet on the way and what does he learn? Let's begin with the lesson, learners. He threw back the covers and sat up on his bed, his feet feeling along the cold floor for his house. Slippers, the telephone ringing incessantly a little distance away. He turned on the light and walked to the phone and took down the receiver. "This is Dr. Benson," he said. The November wind was bringing sounds of winter as it blew around the little white house. The doctor got into his clothes. He went to the table and stared for a moment at his watch, his spirit complaining at the job ahead of him. 2 o'clock? His mind also complained at the horrible hour, and he wondered why children had to be born at such improper times. He took up to 2 small handbags, the short pill bag as the people of the town knew it, and the long obstacle case, the baby bag they called it. Dr. Benson stopped a moment to light and then put back the pack of cigarettes in his overcoat pocket. The wind felt like a surgeon's knife at his face as he opened the door and ran, bending low, around the driveway to the garage. His car started with difficulty, coughed half a dozen times as he drove down the driveway, but then began to run more smoothly as he turned down Grass Street and on to the deserted highway. Mrs. Ott Sorley, who Dr. Benson was on his way to visit, had already had a dozen of children, but it seemed to the doctor that never once had she had a baby in good weather, nor in daylight. And while Dr. Benson was a country doctor, he was still a young man and couldn't find the pleasure that his father, the old Doc Benson, had found in seeing Ott, the father, always 2 or 3 babies behind in payment for his baby bills. It was a long ride to Sorley Farm, and the sight of a man walking alone along the country road, as seen just ahead by the lights of the car, was a welcome relief to the doctor. He slowed down and looked at the man walking along with difficulty against the wind. a little package under his arm. Coming alongside, Dr. Benson stopped and invited the man to ride. The man got him. "Are you going far?" asked the doctor. "I'm going all the way to Detroit," said the man, a rather thin man with small black eyes filled with tears from the wind. "Could you give me a cigarette?" Dr. Benson unbuttoned his coat, then remembered the cigarettes in the outer pocket of his overcoat. He took out the packet and gave it to the writer, who then looked in his own pockets for a match. When the cigarette was lighted, the man held the packet for a moment, then asked, "Do you mind, mister, if I take another cigarette for later?" The rider shook the packet to remove another cigarette without waiting for the doctor to answer. Dr. Benson felt a hand touch in his pocket. "I'll put them back in your pocket," the little fellow said. Dr. Benson put his hand down quickly to receive the cigarettes and was a little irritated to find them already in his pocket. A few minutes later, Dr. Benson said, "So you're going to Detroit?" "I'm going out to look for work in one of the automobile plants." "Are you a mechanic?" said the doctor. "More or less. I have been driving a truck since the war ended, but I lost my job about a month ago." "Where were you in the army during the war?" "Yeah, I was in the ambulance section, right up at the front. Drove an ambulance for 4 years. "Is that so?" said Dr. Benson. "I'm a doctor myself. Dr. Benson is my name." "I thought this car smelled like pills." The man laughed. Then he added, more seriously, "My name is Evans." They rode along silently for a few minutes, and the rider moved himself in his seat and placed his package on the floor. As the man leaned over, Dr. Benson caught his first good look at the small, cat-like face. The doctor also noticed the long, deep scar on the man's cheek, bright and red-looking as though it were of recent origin. He thought of Mrs. Ott Sorley and reached for his watch. His fingers went deep into his pocket before he realized that his watch was not there. Dr. Benson moved his hand very slowly and very carefully below the seat until he felt the leather holster, in which he always carried with him his automatic pistol. He drew out the pistol slowly and held it in the darkness at his side. Dr. Benson stopped the car quickly and pushed the nose of his gun into Evan's side. The rider jumped with fear and put up his hands quickly. "My God, mister," he whispered, "I thought you." Dr. Benson pushed the pistol still deeper into the man's side and repeated coldly, "Put that watch in my pocket before I let this gun go off." Evans put his hand in his own vest pocket and later, with trembling hands, tried to put the watch into the doctor's pocket. With his free hand, Dr. Benson pushed the watch down into his pocket. He opened the door and forced the man out of the car. "I'm out of here tonight, probably to save a woman's life. But I took time trying to help you." Learners, Dr. Benson, he tried to tell Evans that "I'm out here tonight, probably to save a woman's life. But I took out time to help you." He tried to tell the man. He tried to console him. He said that. After that, it was all over. However, Dr. Benson took a cigarette and sat down to smoke. "A fellow I picked up in my car on my way up here tonight tried to rob me," he said to Ott, feeling a little proud. "He took out my watch, but when I pushed my 0.45 pistol into his side, he decided to give it back to me." Ott smiled wide at such an exciting story coming from young Dr. Benson. "Well, I'm glad he gave it back to you," Ott said, "because if he hadn't, he wouldn't have any idea what time the child was born." What time would you say it happened, doctor? Dr. Benson took the watch from his pocket. The baby was delivered about 30 minutes ago and right now it's... He walked over to the lamp on the table. He stared strangely at the watch in his hands. The crystal was cracked. The top was broken. He turned the watch over and held it closer to the lamp. He studied the worn inscription there. To Private T. Evans, ambulance section, whose personal bravery preserved our lives the night of November 3rd, 1943, near the Italian front. So the watch, it held Evans' name and his inscription. Now learners, let's go through the analysis. Well, Dr. Benson, he was a young doctor. He received a call at 2 a.m. in the morning to deliver a baby. He grumbled, he got irritated at the horrible hour and he wondered why babies had to be born at such inappropriate times. He took, like I had mentioned before, that he took small handbags, okay, 2 small handbags. The short pill bag, as the people of town knew it, and the long obstacle case, the baby bag that they called it. Mrs. Ott Surley, who the doctor was visiting, already had a dozen children. He thought that, that she never delivered a child in a good weather or in daylight. So Dr. Benson was irritated. Why? Why children have to be born at such improper times? It was a very long trip to the Sorley farm. As he drove, he came across a thin man with small black eyes, filled with tears from the wind. Since Benson, he was traveling alone and he was bored, he saw the man and he was relieved. He thought of giving him a ride. The man was going all the way to Detroit. Both of them, both Evans and Dr. Benson, they both chatted. And from their conversation, we got to know that Evans, he was a mechanic and that he drove an ambulance. He drove an ambulance for 4 years and he was involved in the army and he fought in the war. After the war was over, he had been driving a truck, but recently Evans had lost a job. And after the chat, we got to know that Benson, he was constantly observing Evans. Okay, so Evans was constantly under scrutiny. As they drove along silently and as the writer placed his package down on the floor, the man leaned over and Dr. Benson looked at his face. And what did he saw, learners? He saw a bright and red scar on his cheek. Okay? Then Benson suddenly realized that something is missing and that something is missing from his pocket. So when he realized that he's not wearing his watch, he took out his gun from his leather holster and he threatened the man to give his watch back. He got angry. He realized, like when he leaned over, Dr. Benson realized that his watch is missing. So, from below the seat, he took out his gun and he threatened the man to give his watch back. Evans, okay, gave him a watch and Benson actually made the man get down. It was only after delivering, like learners, like I have, I've told the story and you must have observed that it was only after delivering Mrs. Sorley's baby that when he was announcing the birth time that he realized that the watch which he was wearing was not his. The inscription on the watch carried Evan's name and actually Evan was being honest. Okay, so this was after giving birth, after he had gone to Ott Sorley's house to deliver the baby, and he was when he was about to announce the birth time of the baby, he then realized that the watch was not his. So learners, what do you understand? What is the moral of the story? Many people judge a book by its cover without opening it up, but they might like what they find inside. We must give others an opportunity to show who they really are, and then we should make our decision. Dr. Benson judges Evans to be a bad person from his behavior and appearance, especially the scar. But at the end, he discovers that Evans is an agreeable, good, brave, and innocent person. Now, learners, let's discuss some themes in the text. The first theme is that war is never over. Wars affected people negatively. On one hand, by losing parts of their bodies or only having scars, just like what happened to Evans, like he also has a scar on his cheek from the war. And seeing that scar, Benson has realized that that he can't be trusted. So because of the scar, Benson he's making he's thinking about events in a very negative way, okay, just by the scar. And scars and people's behavior, you can't judge that, okay. And even after the war got over, Evans' scar and his behavior, it affected his impression on Dr. Benson. Thank you so much. Today, we will be covering lesson name, A Case of Suspicion, in your syllabus. So learners, let's begin with the chapter. Let's go through the background of the author. So let's go through it one more time. The first theme in the lesson is that war is never over. Wars affect people negatively. On one hand, they lose their body parts and they have scars, and even Evans was a victim of that. But Benson did not ignore that. On the other hand, it affected Evans' scars. Because of the war, it affected Benson and his psyche. So even if the war ends, but war is never over in the minds of people. Plus, when in a war and after a war, people are always in a hurry. They do things without permission and deal with people in an informal way. This is exactly what happened when Evans and Dr. Benson. This was exactly what happened with with Evans and Dr. Benson. Evans was talking to Dr. Benson as if he knows him for ages and as if he is his friend. So war makes you informal and you trust people very easily. And the second theme is that you should not judge people from their appearance. Although the appearance is very important, but sometimes the appearance of some people misleads us to negative things, such as making a wrong judgment on people, and that may lead to bad consequences. This is like what happened in the story when Dr. Benson judges Evans as if he was a very bad person, and he judged Evans from his behavior and his appearance, especially the scar. But at the end, he discovers that Evans is a good, brave, and innocent person. So we would search on the deep and not just depend on the appearance of people. Why should we never judge a book by its cover? I have been reiterating this statement a lot. So learners, you must be wondering that why should we not? Why should we never judge a book by its cover? Well, there are many reasons why we must never judge a book by its cover. The first one is that you know nothing about someone just by their outward appearance. Outfits don't define your character, your behavior does. Great achievements are born and not born from fancy suits, but from great minds. Okay, learners, always remember that great achievements, they are born, they are evolved, and not from some fancy suits that if you wear good clothes, you can't judge a person by good clothes. Okay, great achievements are born from great minds. And great minds do not need suits. They do not need fancy suits to feel and look important. To help you understand the phrase better, let us take a look at a story with the same moral. So learners, I'm sharing a small anecdote with you so that you understand the phrase better. Once there was a woman who was going on a train journey. She forgets her wallet at home. While waiting for the train, she feels hungry and goes to a restaurant. With the limited money, she orders the cheapest meal, that is, a plate of rice, and goes to the washroom. On returning, she notices a shabbily dressed man sitting on the table eating from that plate of rice. This makes her very angry and she thinks he stole her plate. But she did not say anything. She started eating from the same plate. The man gets up and leaves. However, soon the lady realizes that she left her belongings on another table. The table that had her plate of rice was kept untouched, and she was eating from the man's plate, but he did not say anything to her. She realized how she judged him for being a thief because of his clothing, when in reality she was eating from his plate. To conclude, I can say that it is not right to assess people on the basis of their appearance. For instance, if you look at a good-looking person, you can only see their skin color, physical traits, and maybe fashion. But what about beyond that? Okay, what about beyond that? What if the good-looking person turns out to be horrible in nature? Thus, you see how outward appearances can be misleading. They are basically valueless things, so never judge someone on their face value. Understood, learners? So, you should never judge a book by its cover. It means that you should never judge someone on their face value. Wallace, in the story, wanted to teach the readers the lesson in which, in his every story, what does Wallace say? Wallace tries to teach readers lessons which will be useful for them. Every lesson is interesting and is full of lessons that can be, mentioned and which can be accepted in your life and used by you in your daily and day-to-day practices. So, what Wallace is trying to tell you that appearance is nothing and you shouldn't judge anybody by their appearance, and appearance of a person does not show everything. The story, A Case of Suspicion, it's short but it's very moralistic and it teaches us a lot of things. So learners, let's go through some important points from the text. Well, Dr. Benson, like you know, after midnight went to deliver a baby. He met Evans in his way and misjudged him because of his appearance. Sometimes appearance of people, it can mislead us to negative things, such as making a wrong judgment on people, and that might lead to bad consequences. Learners, let's go through some important words and their meanings from the text. Incessantly means constant or repetitive. Obstacle means medical tools. Obstacle case, you remember, like Dr. Benson, he carries an obstacle case while he is on his way to Mrs. Otley's house. So obstacle, medical tools. Mechanic, who's a mechanic? In the lesson, Evans, he was a mechanic. So a mechanic is a skilled worker who repairs vehicles. Holster. So holster is basically a cover which is made of leather and it is used for carrying a gun. Inscription. Inscription means words engraved on a stone, monument or a book or on a watch. Like in the end, what do we learn? We learn that the watch belonged to Evans. How? Because his name was inscripted on the watch. Okay? Now learners, let's fill in the blanks with the correct phrasal verb. Okay? So, the first blank, every wise person dash a little money for a rainy day. Choose the correct phrasal verb and answer the statement. Every wise person dash a little money for a rainy day. Excellent. Every wise person puts by a little money for a rainy day. Very good. Now look at the next blank. Please dash the fire after you have cooked rice. Please dash the fire after you have cooked rice. Excellent. The answer is put out. Please put out the fire after you have cooked rice. Next, the meeting was dash as the chairman was not well. Come on, learners, answer the blank. Come on, you can do it. Choose the correct phrasal verb. Very good. The meeting was put off as the chairman was not well. Next, please dash the dictionary on the top shelf after you have looked up the meaning of the words. I repeat, please dash the dictionary on the top shelf after you have looked up the meaning of the words. Excellent. Put back. Please put back the dictionary on the top shelf after you have looked up the meaning of the words. Next sentence, learner. Dash your cardigan as it is cold. Very good. Put on your cardigan as it is cold. Very good. You're answering all correctly. Last, the team dash a great performance. Choose the correct phrasal verb. Excellent. The team puts up a great performance. Very good. So these were some exercises in your chapter. Okay, so you have successfully completed the exercise on phrasal verbs. Now learners, what is an experience? Okay, I hope you have different experiences every day, but can you define experience? All of us, we keep having some experience or the other every day, but how can you define experience? We can perhaps say that an experience is an event that affects or influences one in some way. In this lesson, you are going to learn about reporting or describing experiences. Experiences are something that form a part of your life. They are memories of what you have been a part of. Think a little deeper and you will realize that an experience could make or break your life. It could be good, unforgettable experience or a bad one that you would greatly like to erase off your mind, log. Okay, it can be different kinds of experience. Some experiences can be good and some experiences can be bad which you would like to erase off. Well, just imagine having an experience that you would like to share with your friends, family and colleagues. For instance, you have been on a trip to your hometown lately and you've had the best time and experience of your life. It's a trip that you want to hold on forever and tell your near and dear one all about it. A few simple steps that you are set to head on your journey of the description. Make sure the words that you use are handy and you narrate your experiences in fluent English. Learners, while you're describing an experience, pay heed to the minute details. Do not forget the details involved. And many times, many things go unsaid. But while you are sharing your experience with others, try to include the small details also. In short, in this case, look at the bigger picture. Okay, if you want, dig into some details, include details. You must also use adjectives to describe the destination and to describe your experience. While you are describing your experience, try to use good, impressive words, and for that, you must improve your vocabulary. Now that you are on a trip, describing your trip, you must insert the details of what you felt, of what you went through. Okay, you must include your emotions in your experience. This will not make your description interesting, but it will also enhance and develop your English speaking skills. Do not only describe the place and the site. Be more insightful and personal to add your own touch to the narrative as well. Picture yourself back there. Run back down the memory lane to help you remember what happened when and how the whole experience was etched in your mind. A feeling of nostalgia should pass through your veins as you describe your experience to someone, which in true sense would mean that you are now mastering the art of description. Similarly, mastering English as a language and being confident and accurate while narrating the description is one of the best ways to learn English. It is essential that you understand that you're narrating an experience to someone. It is important to have their attention for as long as your description lasts. You should read some books that are based on descriptive writing, which will certainly improve your English and make you a favorite storyteller in your in your gang, among your friends and colleagues. The language that you will need to use for describing the experiences will be, in the following areas, that while you're describing your experience, try to express in past tense, okay? Use past tense while you're describing your experiences. You must focus on the details and you must report complete actions. Okay, you must describe your own thoughts and feelings. Make your experiences personal. Make the other person relate with you. If it's a personal experience, learners, use I. Okay, use active voice. Okay, and even active voice while you're sequencing something in the past. Use all forms of past tense and make sure that your experiences are in a sequence. Okay, you can use linking verbs as sequencing devices. So make sure that you follow a chronological order while you are sharing your experience, that your experiences are structured. I don't think it's that difficult, is it? So learners, give it a shot and see for yourself. Okay, write your experiences, go and just write your experiences, just take it as a homework and do it. Now learners, in the chapter, we have also come across examples of reported speech. So what is reported speech? Reported speech is when we tell someone what another person said. To do this, we can use direct speech or indirect speech. One example of direct speech is, I work in a bank, said Vinay. So if we have to change this statement into indirect speech, what will we say? Vinay said that he worked in a bank. So learners, when you are changing direct speech into indirect speech, you must use past tense. And like, previously I was telling you how to report an experience. Even while reporting an experience, you must incorporate reported speech. In direct speech, we often use a tense which is further back in the past than the tense originally used. This is called backshift. We also may need to change other words that were used. For example, we must change the pronouns also. Now learners, what are interrogative sentences? And what do you mean by interrogative sentences in the reported speech? Sentences that are used to ask questions are called interrogative sentences. They end with a question mark, and there are two types of interrogative sentences. One that can be answered in either yes or no, and ones that cannot be answered in yes or no. They have to be explained in detail. So, okay, so have you understood interrogative sentences? Good. For example, in direct speech, my friend said to me, what are you studying? So it's an interrogative statement. Now, how to change it into direct speech? My friend asked me what I was doing. So here, even the pronoun has changed from you to I. So while you are changing interrogative sentences, make sure that you change the form of the pronoun as well. Process. Okay, learners, let's go through some steps required for changing interrogative sentences into indirect speech. First, remove the quotation marks and the commas from the reported speech. Put the question mark at the beginning of the reported speech when the question can't be answered in yes or no. If the question can't be answered in yes or no, replace the helping verb with if or whether. Put the subject of the reported speech after it. Put the verb after the subject. Replace the question mark with a period or a full stop. The reported verb, say in the direct speech, be changed to ask or inquire. Okay, so if in the direct tense we sometimes use the word say, but while you are changing direct speech into indirect speech, word say changes to ask or inquired. Now learners, let's conclude the session. Let's go through the main idea of the story one more time before we end today's session. The main idea of the story is that one should never judge someone without investigating. When Mr. Benson was unable to find his watch, he suspected Evans without any important reason except for the fact that Evans was too friendly and put his cigarette packet in Mr. Benson's pocket without asking, and was a jobless man in the middle of a cold night, and that he had given a lift out of kindness. Mr. Benson was wrong to judge him, and later found out that the watch he had gotten from Evans at gunpoint was Evans' watch and not his own, and he was only being suspicious. The story gives us the main idea of not judging without thinking, and also gives us the moral that don't judge a book by its cover. Okay learners, let's end today's session. I hope you found today's lesson helpful. Okay, but please read it again, do the back exercises, do in-text questions, do terminal questions, and practice on your own. Okay, and if you have any doubts, you can mention in the comments section. Thank you so much.